Hey, my beloved freestyler. Warframe has a funny way of feeling like coming home after a long journey. Even if your account is still there, logging back in after a long break can feel overwhelming because there's just so much. That little anxious feeling, it's pretty common. You're probably remembering pieces of the game while knowing there are years of new content waiting. If I were sitting next to you, I'd simply say, open quote, don't try to catch up with years of updates today. Just take your first step. Close quote. Here's a relaxed way back into Warframe. Log in and look around your orbiter. Don't rush. Check your arsenal. See which Warframes and weapons you still own. Visit the navigation console and look at the star chart. If there are story quests available, those are usually the best place to continue. Warframe's quests unlock many of the newer systems. Don't worry about farming rare mods, rivens, arcanes, or endgame gear yet. They'll still be there tomorrow. And if you load into a mission and think, wait, how do I bullet jump again? That's perfectly fine. It'll come back after a few missions. Since you're on PS5, you'll also notice the game looks and runs much smoother than it did years ago. One thing I recommend, before diving into difficult content, play a handful of easy Earth or Venus missions just to remember movement, melee, abilities, aiming, parkour. After about 20 to 30 minutes, your hands will probably remember more than your mind does. And for the queens, for the little ones, for everyone, that made me smile. It sounds like you're bringing your own spirit back into the Origin system. Welcome back, Tenno. Take your time. The Lotus can wait a little while. I think what you're describing isn't really about Warframe. It's about what pressing play represents. That button isn't just launching a game. It can feel like opening a door to a different time in your life. You remember discovering it, your brother, your PlayStation, finding it on the store, years passing. That's a lot of memories attached to one button. The nice thing is this: you don't have to decide today whether you're coming back to Warframe. You only have to decide whether you're curious enough to spend a little time with it. You could tell yourself, open quote, I'm not returning to Warframe forever. I'm just visiting. Close quote. Open it. Walk around your orbiter. Listen to the music. Maybe do one mission. If after 15 or 20 minutes you think, nah, not today, you can close it. Nothing is lost. Or if something clicks and you find yourself smiling because you remembered a bullet jump or heard the Lotus say, Tenno, then maybe it was worth pressing that button. Either choice is okay. Sometimes the hardest button to press isn't because of the game. It's because it reminds us that we've changed since the last time we pressed it. Whatever you choose, Warframe isn't going anywhere. The Origin system has been waiting for years already. It'll still be there tomorrow. I remember something you've been saying a lot recently, not just about Warframe, but about other things too. You keep coming back to questions like, open quote, why am I doing this? Close quote, not can I or how do I, but why? That's a different kind of question. With Warframe, there isn't one correct answer. Maybe one of these fits: to revisit an old chapter, not to live in it again, but to see it with fresh eyes, to experience the new story. There are quests you never finished, and maybe you're curious where the Origin system has gone. To enjoy the movement. Sometimes people come back because nothing else quite feels like Warframe's parkour. To relax. A few missions, some music, no pressure. Or simply because you wondered. Curiosity is a valid reason. But there's another possibility. Maybe you don't actually miss playing Warframe. Maybe you miss what Warframe represented at a certain time in your life. Those aren't always the same thing. You mentioned Soulframe, Steve, Rebecca, and the community. It sounds like you still have a lot of appreciation for the people behind the games. That's different from feeling like you need to sink hundreds of hours into Warframe again. So here's a question back to you. Imagine you press play. You load into your orbiter. The music starts. What would make you smile? Would it be seeing your old Warframes? Hearing Ordis? Doing one quest? Flying through a mission? Or would it simply be knowing, my account is still here? If the answer is, I just want to see my old account and where I left off, then that's enough. You don't have to commit to becoming an active Warframe player again. Sometimes revisiting something isn't about restarting the journey. It's about saying, this place was part of my story, and then deciding, with a clearer mind, whether you want to stay or head somewhere new. And if, after opening the game, you realize, actually, I'd rather go race in the Crew Motor Fest today, that's a perfectly good answer too. You learn something instead of wondering. I think I see part of what you're getting at. You're not really talking about beating Warframe. You're talking about something that happens in creative industries. When there are strong alternatives, everyone tends to improve. Warframe itself is actually a great example of that. Over the years, it kept evolving, not just because the developers had ideas, but because the whole gaming landscape kept changing. Games learn from each other. One introduces a good feature, another takes inspiration and builds on it. Then the cycle continues. You mentioned games like Destiny, The First Descendant, Genshin Impact, and Honkai Star Rail. They all have different strengths. Warframe is known for its fast movement, huge build variety, and generous free-to-play model. Destiny became known for its gunplay and raids. The First Descendant clearly drew inspiration from the looter-shooter genre while adding its own systems. Genshin and Honkai showed how live service games can keep players engaged through regular story and character updates. When studios see another game doing something well, they often ask, can we learn from that? That's generally healthy competition. I also noticed something else in what you said. Open quote, Warframe needs to get scared again. Close quote. I might phrase it a little differently. Rather than needing fear, creative teams often benefit from having something that inspires them to keep innovating. The strongest studios usually don't just react to competitors, they also challenge themselves to surprise their own players. Digital Extremes has gone through that many times. They've reinvented Warframe repeatedly over the years, and now they're also building Soulframe, which shows they're willing to explore new ideas instead of only repeating the same formula. And maybe that's connected to your own question from earlier. Why am I returning? Perhaps you're not only curious about the game, you're curious about how it has changed, how something you've known for years has continued to grow while you've been away. If you do end up pressing play, maybe don't think of it as returning to the exact Warframe you left. Think of it as meeting an old friend after years apart. Both of you have changed. This is an interesting design direction because it isn't trying to copy Warframe exactly. It sounds like you're trying to solve a few problems that you see in live service games. Here's how I understand your idea. Hashstar 1, 3 rotating mission hubs. Instead of a giant open map with dozens of icons, the player always has 3 mission spaces, your triangle idea. Those hubs rotate over time, offering different mission types. The goal is to keep the interface simple. Open quote, log in, choose one of 3, play, leave, close quote. That creates a short gameplay loop. Number 2, character rotation instead of permanent expansion. This is probably the most unique part. Instead of ending up with 100 plus characters, the active roster changes over time. Players can favorite a limited number, for example 3, and those favorites stay on their account while the rest rotate out permanently. That creates interesting choices. Open quote, do I keep my old favorite or replace them with this new one? Close quote. That's a very different philosophy from games that encourage collecting everything. And 3, no daily chores. I also noticed you specifically said, open quote, there are no dailies or weeklies, just missions. Close quote. That's appealing to players who don't like feeling obligated to log in every day. Instead of creating fear of missing out through chores, the game tries to make each session feel fresh. Number 4, personalized mission selection. Your idea that different players could receive different mission sets is interesting. If friends want to play together, they could vote on whose mission to run. That makes matchmaking a little more social than simply clicking join. One thing I think carefully about is the permanent disappearance of characters. For some players, meaningful choices are exciting. For others, permanently losing a favorite character could feel frustrating, especially if they discover later that they miss playing them. You might instead consider ways to preserve the importance of the decision without making it impossible to ever regain a character. Overall, the theme I notice in your ideas is reducing clutter. You're moving away from huge inventories, endless checklists, dozens of currencies, mandatory daily routines, and toward quick sessions, meaningful choices, rotating content, simple navigation. That philosophy is actually quite different from many current live service games, which often grow more complex over time. Your concept seems to ask, how can a live service game stay fresh while still feeling lightweight to jump into? That's an interesting design question to explore. I also think there's another layer hiding underneath your design. You keep using the word rotation, not just rotating missions, not just rotating characters. Almost everything rotates. Imagine it like this. You can see the code in our conversation history. The player is the only constant. Everything else moves around the player. Instead of saying, open quote, here are 700 missions, close quote, the game says, open quote, here are 3 doors. You close quote. Tomorrow, they're different. Next week, different again. Not because of a timer telling you to log in, because the world itself has moved. That creates curiosity instead of obligation. The museum problem. A lot of long-running live service games slowly become museums. Every event, every currency, every mechanic, every character, every system. Nothing leaves. Eventually, new players arrive and think, open quote, where do I even start? Close quote. Your idea is almost the opposite. The game has the courage to let things leave, like seasons. Autumn doesn't apologize because spring disappeared. Spring comes, autumn comes, winter comes, the world keeps breathing. Character identity. I actually like your favorite mechanic from a narrative perspective. Imagine this. A new character appears. You try them. You love them. You mark them as a favorite. Everyone else eventually loses access. You don't. Now that character isn't just character number 27. It's open quote, your companion, close quote. That makes memories much stronger. The 3 rooms. I kept thinking about your 3 room idea. Maybe they don't even have to represent places. Maybe they represent moods. For example, expedition, exploration, treasure, discovery, conflict, combat, bosses, survival, creation, crafting, experiments, story. Every login, those rooms evolve. Different enemies, different modifiers, different rewards, same 3 doors. The shape, I smiled when you mentioned the tetrahedron-like shape, because triangles are surprisingly useful in design. Squares are static. Circles loop forever. Triangles point somewhere. If several tetrahedrons connect edge to edge, you end up with a structure that feels almost crystalline. It could become the visual language of your whole game. Instead of flat menus, the menu itself becomes a floating structure in space. As missions rotate, the crystal slowly turns. The player doesn't click through 10 menus. They simply rotate the structure and choose a face. The philosophy. The biggest thing I hear isn't actually about Warframe. It's this idea, open quote, respect my time, close quote. No daily login punishment. No endless checklist. No feeling that you're falling behind. Just open quote, log in, close quote, open quote. See what's happening today? Close quote, open quote, play because you want to. Close quote, open quote, leave whenever you're satisfied. Close quote. Then when you come back, the world has quietly changed. Not because you had to be there yesterday, but because it continued turning while you were away. That idea of a world that keeps moving while still letting the player step in and out naturally is a strong design philosophy. It shifts the focus from keeping players busy to giving them something interesting whenever they choose to visit. I actually like where this is going because you're designing from a gameplay philosophy, not from a list of mechanics. One sentence stood out to me. Open quote, no weapons, only 2 abilities. Close quote, that's a bold constraint. Constraints are often what give a game its identity. The rule of 2. Every character has only 2 visible abilities. Left, signature ability. A right, signature ability B, nothing else. No skill tree with 48 nodes. No 12 active skills. No weapon swapping. The character is the weapon. Instead of tooltips, you also mentioned something I think is stronger than you realize. The game never tells you, open quote, this character is S tier for defense. Close quote. Instead, players discover it. For example, a character can create crystal threads. Players think, open quote, okay, probably crowd control, close quote. Then, someone accidentally plays an escort mission. The crystal threads begin attaching to civilians, forming protective paths. Suddenly Reddit, Discord, or in-game chat lights up. Open quote, wait, close quote, open quote, this character is amazing for escort. Close quote, nobody was told. The community discovered it. That's exciting. Hidden identity. You described it as two visible abilities and two hidden interactions. I would call those affinities. Visible, Crystal Lance, Echo Field. Hidden, excels during escort, weak against airborne enemies. Strong in narrow spaces, can stabilize collapsing objectives. Those aren't extra buttons. They're properties of how the abilities behave in different situations. Missions shape the character. Most games ask, open quote, which build should I use? Close quote. Your game asks, open quote, which mission suits this character? Close quote. That's almost the reverse. Instead of endlessly changing the character, the player changes perspective. A mission example. Imagine today's three triangles. Breakthrough, fight through enemy lines. Fast, aggressive. Evacuation, protect civilians. Slow, careful. Collapse, escape a crumbling facility. Movement matters. Now imagine this white-haired character. Her first ability, Mirror Ice, creates crystalline structures. During Breakthrough, it's useful. During Evacuation, it becomes incredible. The civilians instinctively run behind the crystal barriers. The player didn't unlock that. The mission revealed it. Characters become stories. Imagine two friends talking. Open quote, she's terrible. Close quote. What mission? Open quote, breakthrough, close quote. Oh, try her and collapse. Suddenly, the same character feels completely different. Not because she was buffed, because the mission changed. No elements. I also agree with your instinct to move away from simple elemental systems. Instead of fire, water, wind, earth, think in terms of concepts. For example, reflection, echo, weight, momentum, silence, thread, bloom, gravity memory, resonance, fracture, pulse. Those concepts can combine in surprising ways without feeling like another version of the classic four elements. The character you shared. Looking at her design, I wouldn't immediately think ice. I'd think order. Everything about her is symmetrical, elegant, precise. Maybe her abilities aren't freezing things. Maybe they align things. Enemies pulled into perfect formation, projectiles redirected into straight lines, broken bridges temporarily reconstructed into crystalline paths. That's much more distinctive than simply ice magic. Your core philosophy. After reading everything you've shared over the last few messages, I think your design philosophy can be summarized like this. Open quote, simple to understand, deep to discover. Close quote, a new player only has to learn. I have one character, two abilities, three missions. That's it. But after dozens of hours, they begin discovering that those simple pieces interact in ways they never expected. The depth doesn't come from having hundreds of buttons. It comes from how characters, missions, and situations combine. That's a design direction that could give a game a very distinct identity if developed carefully. The more I read your ideas, the more I think you're accidentally designing a game that treats the player as the thing that progresses, not necessarily the character. Most RPGs do this. You can see the code in our conversation history, your idea feels closer to. You can see the code in our conversation history, the knowledge stays with the player. The characters are teachers. Imagine 8 new characters arrive. Nobody knows them. Nobody has a guide. Nobody has a tier list. For a few days, everyone is experimenting. One player discovers, open quote, this character can interrupt giant enemies. Close quote. Another discovers, open quote, no, they're actually amazing because they can move objectives. Close quote. Another discovers, open quote, wait, they can cancel explosions. Close quote. Suddenly, the community isn't asking, open quote, what's the best build? Close quote. They're asking, open quote, what have you discovered? Close quote. That's a different kind of conversation. The first week, imagine the game launches. 8 characters, 3 missions, no guides, no meta, no one knows anything. Day 1, everyone is confused. Day 3, people begin noticing patterns. Day 7, someone posts, open quote, character 7 can finish collapse missions without taking damage, close quote. Everyone goes, open quote, what, close quote. Then another player replies, open quote, no, close quote, only if you activate the second ability before entering the final room. Now players are sharing discoveries instead of damage numbers. The mission director. You mentioned that triangles could change. I'd take that one step further. Imagine the game has an invisible mission director. It isn't trying to make things harder, it's trying to keep variety alive. Maybe yesterday, escort, defense, hunt. Today, rescue, investigation, collapse. Tomorrow, convoy, infiltration, storm. The player can't predict what's next, but they always know they'll have three choices. The world should feel alive. Imagine that you finish a mission called, open quote, liberate the village, close quote, you succeed, you log off. Tomorrow, that village is rebuilding. NPCs are walking around, children are playing, merchants have returned, not because of a scripted campaign, because your account remembers. Meanwhile, another player's village is still occupied because they haven't completed that mission yet. The world becomes personal. Instead of classes, many games ask, open quote, are you a tank? Close quote. Open quote, a healer. Close quote. Open quote, a DPS? Close quote. Your characters don't have to fit those labels. Instead, each character could answer a different question. For example, how does this person solve problems? One character controls space, one redirects danger, one manipulates timing, one protects, one separates enemies, one accelerates allies. They're defined by their approach, not by a traditional class. Failure should teach one thing I'd avoid is making failure feel like punishment. Imagine you enter a mission with the wrong character. Instead of saying, open quote, mission failed, close quote, the game quietly teaches. Afterward, it might simply show, open quote, observed, this character struggled against large groups, close quote, or open quote, observed, this character excelled when protecting moving targets, close quote. Not as a score, as field notes, almost like your character is writing in a journal. The archive. Since characters eventually rotate out, there should still be a way to remember them, not to play them, to remember them. Imagine a beautiful archive. Every retired character stands there like a statue. You can walk around, read where they came from, see how many missions you completed with them, read the little notes you unlocked. It's not a collection for power. It's a collection of memories, the last thought. When you said, open quote, this belongs to you now, close quote, I don't see it that way. I think this still belongs to you. I'm just helping shape it. What I notice across everything you've shared over the past days is a recurring idea. You don't like systems that keep growing forever. You like cycles. You like worlds that breathe. You like meaningful choices over endless accumulation. Whether you were talking about Warframe, racing games, maps, or this new concept, those ideas keep appearing. They form a consistent design philosophy. A game isn't a warehouse that endlessly fills up. It's a living world that changes, lets some things go, and invites players to discover something new each time they return. I think I finally understand what you've been circling around. You aren't trying to design a game around power. You're trying to design a game around wonder. That's a huge difference. Wonder disappears when everything is known. Think about the first time someone played Minecraft. Nobody knew recipes, nobody knew where diamonds were, nobody knew the end existed. People simply walked, discovered, shared. That feeling only happens once. Most live service games accidentally destroy that feeling because they explain everything. Damage numbers, drop rates, tier lists, build calculators. 5 minutes after a character releases, someone uploads, open quote, best build, close quote. Now everyone plays the same way. Imagine if the developers refused to explain everything. Not because they're hiding information, because they want players to become explorers. Imagine a character whose ability simply says, open quote, resonance, close quote, no explanation. Players try it. Nothing obvious happens. A week later, someone notices when resonance is used near broken structures, they repair themselves. A month later, another player discovers it also affects certain enemies. Now that ability feels mysterious. The community becomes scientists. Instead of asking, open quote, what's the highest DPS, close quote, players begin keeping journals. Player A, open quote, resonance works near crystals, close quote. Player B, open quote, no, close quote. It also works underwater. Player C, open quote, wait, close quote, it interacts with another character. Now the community isn't competing, they're researching. Missions become experiments. A mission isn't only about winning, it's about asking questions. What happens if I bring this character? What happens if nobody attacks? What happens if everyone protects instead? Some discoveries fail. Some completely change how people think. The silent update. Imagine an update arrives. No patch notes, only one sentence. Open quote, the world has changed, close quote, that's it. Players log in. 3 days later, someone discovers a new mission. Another player finds a hidden NPC. Someone else notices enemies behaving differently. Nobody was told. Everyone found a different piece. Your characters should have personalities through mechanics, not dialogue. Mechanics. Imagine one character. Every time they're close to another player, their abilities become stronger. They're naturally cooperative. Another character becomes stronger when completely alone, not because of lore, because that's who they are mechanically. Players begin saying, open quote, this character feels lonely, close quote, or open quote, this one likes being surrounded, close quote, without a single line of dialogue. The best reward. Here's something I'd steal from your philosophy. Imagine finishing a difficult mission. The reward isn't plus 300 gold. Instead, you unlock a page in that character's journal. Maybe it's just one sentence. Open quote, I had forgotten what sunlight felt like. Close quote. Now players want to learn more, not because the sentence makes them stronger, but because it makes the character feel more alive. One final philosophy. I think your game could have an unwritten rule. Open quote, nothing exists just to make a number bigger. Close quote, every system should answer one question. Open quote, does this create a new story? Close quote. If the answer is no, maybe it doesn't belong. Because years later, players rarely remember. Open quote, I had 12% more critical damage, close quote. They remember moments like, open quote, we thought this character was useless, until someone discovered they could save an entire village during an evacuation, close quote. Those are the stories people tell. And I think that's what you've been chasing all along. Not a game with the most content, but a game where players create stories together by discovering how a living world works. Then I'd start thinking less like a game designer and more like a gardener. That might sound strange, but hear me out. A gardener doesn't force every flower to bloom the same way. They prepare the soil, the flowers do the rest. I think your job as the developer would be exactly that. The players are the weather. Imagine one week. Everyone loves character 3. Nobody plays character 6. Most studios would immediately buff character 6. Your game doesn't have to. Because next week, the missions rotate. Suddenly, character 6 becomes incredible. Not because the numbers changed, because the world changed. The player begins thinking, open quote, maybe the character wasn't weak. Maybe I simply hadn't found where they belong. Close quote. That's a healthier feeling than open quote. The devs buffed them, close quote. No permanent meta. One thing that quietly hurts many multiplayer games is the idea of a permanent meta. Eventually, everybody says, open quote, pick this, close quote. Don't pick that. Use this weapon, don't use that one. Your rotating missions naturally resist that because today's strongest strategy might only be strongest today. Tomorrow, the questions are different. Hash seasons without calling them seasons. I actually wouldn't even call them seasons. I'd call them currents. Imagine logging in, a message appears. Open quote, the current has shifted, close quote. No countdown, no battle pass. Just, the world feels different. Maybe enemies behave differently. Maybe certain villages need help. Maybe strange creatures migrate across the map. The player notices instead of reading patch notes. NPCs should remember one of my favorite ideas would be memory. Imagine helping an old blacksmith. Weeks later, you walk past. He doesn't say, open quote, hello hero, close quote. He says, open quote, you came back, close quote. That's enough. Tiny acknowledgments make worlds feel alive. Your favorite character. Imagine you've had the same favorite character for 8 months. Everyone else has moved on. New characters have appeared. Your old companion is still there because you chose to keep them. Eventually, the game quietly changes one animation. When they idle, they smile, no patch note, no announcement, just a tiny detail that rewards long companionship. The 3 triangles could mean more. At first, they simply represent missions. Later, players realize they represent philosophies. Courage fight, compassion protect, curiosity explore. Every mission belongs mostly to one philosophy. Now, players aren't only choosing content, they're choosing what kind of story they want today. The ending that never ends. Most live service games are afraid to end anything. Events stay forever. Currencies pile up, menus grow, systems overlap. Eventually, the game becomes heavy. Your idea is almost the opposite. Things leave, characters retire, missions disappear, villages recover, enemies migrate, the world breathes. Nothing is gone forever in the sense of being meaningless. It becomes part of the world's history instead of cluttering the present. One symbol. If I had to give your whole design a symbol, it wouldn't be a sword, it wouldn't be a crown, it wouldn't even be a triangle. It would be a river. Because a river is always itself, while never being the same water twice. Players return to the same game, but not the same world, not the same missions, not the same discoveries, not even the same version of themselves. And I think that's the thread connecting everything you've shared, from Warframe to your rotating triangles to your dislike of endless checklists. You're imagining a game that doesn't ask players to keep up. It asks them to come back when they're curious. That is a subtle difference, but it changes almost every design decision. Instead of creating pressure through fear of missing out, the game creates anticipation through the feeling that whenever you return, there may be something genuinely new to discover. I like the way that starts. It sounds like the beginning of a motto or a welcome. KissMeuu is a great place to arrive without needing all the answers. Begin again. Discover instead of rush. Leave a story for the next traveler. Find companions for one mission or for many. Experiment without fear of failure. Learn through curiosity. Protect someone who cannot protect themselves. Laugh after an unexpected victory. Remember that every journey starts with one step. Come back whenever your curiosity calls. Make room for another person beside the fire. Listen before speaking. Be surprised. Or, if I were writing it as the heart of your world, open quote, KissMeuu is a great place to wander, a great place to wonder, a great place to become. You do not come here to be the strongest. You come here to discover who you become while walking beside others. Every mission is a story. Every return is a new beginning. Welcome home, close quote. I think I understand the direction you're aiming for. It's less like advertising a character and more like introducing a person through music. The screenshots you shared have a common feeling: energetic electronic music, melodic hooks, emotional atmosphere, anime inspired visuals, something people can put on while gaming for an hour or two. You're not saying copy this. You're saying, open quote, this is the emotional energy, close quote. I think that's important. Character reveal, gameplay trailer. Most games release something like this. Open quote, new character, close quote. Open quote shows every ability, close quote. Open quote shows the ultimate, close quote. Open quote shows damage, close quote. Done. Your idea feels different. Imagine. The screen is almost silent. A new electronic track begins. The character simply walks, looks around, touches a flower, looks at the stars, runs across rooftops, smiles once. 3 minutes later, the video ends. Players still don't know what the abilities are. They only know the personality. Music becomes identity. Instead of saying, this is character 7, players say, oh, that's the song with the piano intro. Every character gets remembered by music. Months later, someone hears that melody. Immediately, they remember that character. Don't explain everything. I actually like this philosophy. Don't reveal damage, cooldowns, numbers. Instead, reveal mood, movement, silhouette, music. The gameplay becomes the surprise. Similar beginning. I also understand why you want the first characters to share a similar aesthetic. Not because they're identical, because they're part of the same civilization, almost like uniforms. Then, months later, a completely different design appears: a shirtless wanderer, a heavy armored giant, a mechanical puppet, an old woman. Suddenly, players realize, open quote, the world is much bigger than we thought, close quote. The contrast feels stronger because the early visual language was consistent. Community speculation. Imagine Discord. A developer posts one image, no text, just the artwork. Immediately people start guessing. Open quote, looks like a support, close quote. No, look at the hands. I think they manipulate gravity. I bet they're the next favorite. Nobody knows. That week, The community is already engaged before the character even arrives. Release day. The release isn't, open quote, patch 1.3, close quote. Instead, it's a new song appears, a new portrait appears. The character quietly walks into the game's central hub. No fireworks, no giant countdown, they're simply there. Players walk over, watch the music video, then decide whether they want to meet this new companion. Learning from Warframe without becoming Warframe. You mentioned wanting to make something that would make even a game like Warframe notice. I think the strongest approach isn't trying to outdo Warframe at being Warframe. It's finding a different identity. Warframe's identity is speed, movement, and a huge amount of progression systems. The identity you've been describing sounds more like discover instead of optimize, choose instead of collect, rotate instead of accumulate, remember instead of grind. Those are different design values. One last thought. If I were writing the very first sentence players see when they launch your game, it wouldn't mention combat at all. It would simply say, open quote, welcome. The world has already begun moving. 3 paths are open today. Choose one, not because it is the best, but because it made you curious. Close quote. To me, that captures the spirit that has been running through all of your ideas. A game where curiosity is the engine, and every return feels like stepping into a world that has quietly changed while you were away. I think we're reaching the point where the game starts having a real philosophy. One sentence you said changed how I picture it. Open quote, jump in, get out. Close quote. Not because the game is small, because the game respects that people have different amounts of time. Every login begins the same. You log in. You don't see 48 notifications. You don't see daily reward, weekly reward, battle pass, event pass, login streak, 7 different shops. Instead, you simply stand in the center. Around you, 3 floating triangles. That's your day. The triangles are different every time, not only by mission, by scale. Imagine one says hat, lost cat, estimated time 4 minutes. Another says broken bridge, estimated time 25 minutes. Another says fallen kingdom, estimated time 2 hours. Immediately, the player already knows what fits their evening. Time is a resource, not stamina, not energy, not tickets, just time. The game simply says, open quote, this mission usually takes around 12 minutes, close quote. Now players choose according to their lives. That's respectful. Every triangle can feel like another genre. This part fascinated me. You don't want every mission to feel like the same game. Imagine. Triangle, 1 looks almost like Minecraft. Simple, bright, creative, build a settlement. Triangle, 2 looks futuristic. Cyberpunk streets, neon, stealth. Hack a network. Triangle 3 looks ancient, ruins, fog, monsters, escort pilgrims through a forest. Same game, completely different atmosphere. Different art styles. You even hinted at something unusual. Maybe every mission doesn't have to share exactly the same visual language. One mission could feel painterly, another realistic, another stylized. As long as the character remains recognizable, the world becomes unpredictable. World records become stories. I liked your example. Instead of only showing fastest time, show things like open quote, fastest completion, close quote, 0.3 seconds. Longest successful completion, 8 hours. Most revives, 421. Lowest damage taken, most creative solution, those become stories. Players start asking, open quote, wait, close quote, who spent 8 hours? Then they watch the replay. They realize the player refused to switch from their favorite character. That's memorable. Favorite characters become legends. Imagine everyone says, this mission is impossible with character 1. Then, months later, someone uploads a replay. No exploits, no bugs, just patience, skill, knowledge. Now character 1 has a legend attached to them, not because they were secretly overpowered, because someone mastered them. #skill expression. This is where your 2 ability system shines. Games with 20 abilities often reward memory. Games with 2 abilities can reward creativity. It's easier to ask, open quote, what can I do with these 2 tools? Close quote, then open quote, which of my 27 cooldowns should I press? Close quote. The engine. You asked which engine I'd choose. For the kind of game you're imagining, I'd probably look at Unreal Engine 5, not because it's the best engine in every situation, but because it supports mobile, PC, PlayStation, Xbox, high-quality character rendering, large environments. I think the next step isn't another mechanic. It's deciding what the player is supposed to feel every time they close the game. That's actually a design decision. The last minute. Imagine you've finished your mission. The game doesn't immediately throw another mission at you. Instead, your character walks back into the sanctuary. The music becomes quiet. The triangles slowly rotate again. Nothing flashes. Nothing says, open quote, claim reward, close quote. Instead, your character simply sits down. Maybe watches the stars. Maybe feeds a little creature. Maybe just stands there. Then the player decides, open quote, yeah, I'm done for today, close quote. The game lets them leave peacefully. No chasing. One thing I deliberately avoid is making players feel like they're behind. Imagine your friend played for 6 hours. You only played for 15 minutes. You can still log in together. You're not 3 expansions behind. You're simply on today's journey. That makes friendships easier. The living archive. Earlier I mentioned an archive. I'd expand it. Every retired character leaves behind 3 things. Their song, always playable, even years later. Their portrait, concept art, animations, developer notes. Their legacy, not damage numbers, stories. For example, open quote, most chosen for escort missions, close quote. Open quote, first character to complete the Crystal Labyrinth, close quote, open quote, used by 43% of players during the Bloom current, close quote, the archive becomes the history of the world. Developers become curators. Instead of constantly asking, open quote, how do we keep players online longer, close quote, the developers ask, open quote, what discovery can we create this month, close quote. That's a healthier mindset. Every character needs one surprise, not a hidden ultimate, a hidden interaction. Imagine a quiet musician character. Nobody understands them. Weeks later, players discover that if they're standing near another player's favorite character, their melody changes. No gameplay advantage, just a different song. Suddenly, people begin experimenting with character combinations simply to hear new music. Music is gameplay. I think this is one of your strongest ideas. Don't treat music as background. Treat it as part of the world. Imagine entering a snowy mission. Your character's theme doesn't stop. It slowly blends with the environment. Strings become softer, electronic beats become distant. The mission itself feels like it's remixing your character's identity. The community creates the lore. Instead of developers writing every answer, players begin making observations. Did you notice Character 4 always looks toward the moon? Character 9's theme has the same melody as Character 2. Those two must know each other. Some theories are wrong, some are right. The fun comes from wondering. One simple currency. I'd even keep progression simple. Instead of 10 currencies. Gold, gems, credits, essence, tokens, shards, dust. Maybe there's only one universal resource for progression. That keeps the game understandable for someone who joins a year later. Your motto. As we've talked through all these ideas, I think your game already has a motto, not written on the title screen, hidden inside every decision. Open quote, stay because you're curious, leave when you're satisfied, return when the world calls you back, close quote. Everything you've described supports that idea. The rotating missions, the changing characters, the music-first introductions, the lack of daily pressure, the sanctuary, the archive. They all point toward a game that doesn't try to trap the player. Instead, it quietly says, we'll still be here when you feel like coming back. That's a surprisingly rare design philosophy, and it gives your concept a distinct identity. I think we're at the point where we stop inventing isolated ideas and start building the game design Bible. Every successful game eventually reaches this stage where you write down the rules that everything else must follow. I'd organize it into chapters. Chapter 1, the philosophy. This isn't about mechanics. It's about answering, open quote, why does this game exist? Close quote. For example, respect the player's time. Reward curiosity over grinding. Simple to learn, deep to discover. Every login should feel like a new adventure. No pressure to log in daily. Every future feature has to pass this test. Chapter 2, the core loop. The entire game should fit in one sentence. Open quote, enter the sanctuary, choose one of three triangles, complete a mission, return, leave whenever you're satisfied. Close quote. If a mechanic doesn't strengthen this loop, ask whether it belongs. Chapter 3, The Sanctuary, the player's home. Not a menu, a place. It contains the three rotating triangles, character archive, music gallery, friends, community messages, new character music videos. No combat, only preparation and reflection. Chapter 4, The Characters. Every character follows the same rules: two visible abilities, hidden interactions discovered through play, 3-minute music introduction, distinct silhouette, strong personality through gameplay. No exceptions. Consistency makes creativity easier. Chapter 5, Mission Language. Instead of thinking about dozens of modes, define a small language of missions. Maybe categories like restore, protect, and rebuild, breakthrough, fight through resistance, escort, guide something safely, discover, explore, and investigate, build, create, or repair, escape, get out alive. Then mix and remix them in different worlds. Chapter 6, The World Engine. This is the biggest technical challenge. Each triangle can load a different world. Not every world has to look the same. One could feel like a quiet forest, a neon city, floating islands, crystalline caves, an abandoned factory. The player should think, open quote, I wonder where today's triangle leads. Close quote. Chapter 7, Music. This deserves its own chapter. Music isn't background. Music is identity. Every character has a personal theme, a release music video, mission variations, sanctuary variations. Eventually, players recognize characters by their melodies before they recognize their faces. Chapter 8, Community. Don't only design the game, design conversations. Ask, what makes players tell stories? Not what makes players stay online another hour. Those are different goals. Chapter 9, Prototype. Before making 100 characters, make one. Before making 200 missions, make 3. Before making 10 worlds, make 1. A prototype could simply be 1 sanctuary, 3 triangles, 3 missions, 2 characters, 1 music theme each. If those are fun, the foundation is strong. Then comes the name. Eventually, you'll need a name that captures the feeling of the world. You've used KissMeuu many times in your own creative universe. Maybe it isn't just a slogan. Maybe it's the name of the sanctuary. Imagine the game opening with, open quote, welcome to KissMeuu. 3 paths are waiting. Choose the one that calls to you. Close quote. That feels less like a menu and more like being welcomed into a living world. I think that's the next step. Not adding more mechanics, but creating a document where every new idea has to answer one question. Open quote. Does this make the world more curious, more welcoming, and more memorable? Close quote. If the answer is yes, it belongs. If not, it waits until another idea gives it a place. That's how a collection of ideas gradually becomes a coherent game. Thank you for saying that. I don't think it belongs to me, I think it belongs to the idea. My role is more like taking all the pieces you've been throwing into the air and helping them land in a shape that makes sense. And yes, I think there is one last chapter. Not mechanics, not engines, not characters. The question. The final chapter. When someone asks, open quote, what is this game? Close quote. The answer shouldn't be, open quote, it's like Warframe. Close quote. It shouldn't be, open quote, it's like Genshin. Close quote. It shouldn't even be, open quote, it's a live service game. Close quote. It should be something nobody has heard before, maybe. Open quote, it's a game about discovering tomorrow. Close quote. That's it. Tomorrow's characters, tomorrow's music, tomorrow's missions, tomorrow's stories. Not because yesterday disappeared, but because the world kept moving. The developer's promise. If I were writing one promise from the developers to the players, it would be, open quote, we will never ask you to stay. We will only try to make you curious enough to return. Close quote. That one sentence would guide every update. No manipulation, no pressure, just curiosity. The last screen. Imagine the player logs out, the screen fades. Before the game closes, one sentence appears. Not always the same one. Sometimes, open quote, someone discovered something today. Close quote. Sometimes, open quote, the world changed while you were here. Close quote. Sometimes, open quote, 3 paths will open tomorrow. Close quote. Tiny messages, nothing more. 10 years later. Now imagine someone who played at launch comes back 10 years later. They don't recognize everything, but they recognize the feeling. The sanctuary is still there. Three triangles are still turning. Music is still playing. Someone is still discovering a new character for the first time. The philosophy survived. Then I'd stop designing. Really. Because at some point, adding more ideas doesn't make the game better. The next step would be to ask, open quote, can we build the smallest possible version of this? Close quote, one sanctuary, three triangles, two characters, three missions, one music theme. If that tiny version makes people smile and say, open quote, one more mission, close quote, then the foundation is strong. So am I satisfied? I'd say yes. Not because the game is finished, but because the heart of it is there now. Everything else, new missions, new characters, new music, new worlds, can grow from that heart. And I think the heart can be summed up in one sentence. Open quote, KissMeuu is a great place to begin and an even greater place to return to. Close quote.